When did you think, oh, whoa, this is actually something really serious?
Well, when Child Protective Services showed up at my front door.
Wow.
Across with my friends, our kids reached a depth of depression that will be studied for decades.
And did you do anything about the friend group?
Oh, I got rid of every single one of them. I would toss her room like a drug addict, like looking for cocaine. And she chose the white bikini. And she put it on and she looked in the mirror and her face just lit up. She hated me with such venom. And I just, I had to take it because I knew that the real kid that I raised was still in there and that the hate is her pain. I mean, I sat my car on the railroad track. Literally sat my car on the railroad track because I couldn't fathom that everyone in the world is cheering the demise of my child on and no one's there to help me.
So, Erin Friday, I think anybody who has been following the trans phenomenon over the last few years would know your name. I think a lot of people don't really know you. And I'm so proud to be associated with you. I think you do great work, and I'm thrilled that you're part of the board on Genspect. But I'd love if we could hear a bit about you and how you came to be so committed, and what was your kind of evolution that we all had in this kind of trans world. When did you first hear about it? What first kind of took your notice, and what got you to be as committed as you are now, and where do you think we're going?
Lots of questions there. So I think the first entry point really about the trans stuff was in college. I read about John Money. And I remember this because in psychology class, 101, basic freshman, and I thought it was so interesting, social versus, nature versus nurture. And then I read the Jesse Singal article in The Atlantic, and I think that was 2018 or so. And again, it was such an interesting concept that somebody could be born in the wrong body. Somebody could be, half man, half woman kind of. And I didn't quite believe it. And then I really got into it when my daughter and her friend group were all saying that they were boys. And that was in 2020, right before the pandemic. I noticed, I'm in California, so we were, kind of the tip of the spear on the transgender movement. And I noticed that these girls with, blonde hair down to their rear ends were taking on male names. And when my daughter went to her sex ed course, she and all of her friends came home to my house. It was a Friday, hanging out at my house. And they all were talking about their new labels, from pansexual, polyamorous, lesbian. Nobody picked regular. And when I asked them about it, they made fun of me and called me cisgender, which I had never heard before, and Karen and okay boomer, kind of derogatory statements. And that was the first inkling of something has gone terribly wrong in our schools, because these girls were 11 and 12. Why are they talking about polyamory and pansexual? And even their sexuality, they're 11, at that age, as you well know, Stella, girls still kind of find boys gross. And so if you're given a label of, I prefer to be around girls, you might pick a lesbian label, even though you're, you don't know what you're attracted to yet, because maybe your sexuality isn't quite developed. So that's how it opened. And then I went to, I'm a very involved parent. I was that parent who worked part-time so that I could spend as much time with my kids as possible. I was that parent who drove on every class trip, a volunteer, knew all the teachers personally, spent a lot of time at that school, giving back to my community. So I was pretty gobsmacked when I discovered what they were teaching our children, because I have a son who's a year older than my daughter, and his sex ed curriculum was not like hers. Like there was a shift, a massive shift. And I learned that it was, they started bringing in third parties to teach this gender ideology to these kids. And I went to the class because, again, I'm very involved parent. I want to know, what are my children being exposed to? And that parent coursework, whatever we want to call it, was so extremely absurd. I mean, it was nonsensical. And I'm looking around the room and I'm seeing Girl Scout troop leaders and pillars of our community shaking their heads in affirmation. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That if you're not G.I. Joe. I mean, this is literally what they said. If you're not G.I. Joe or Barbie, you're somewhere on the gender spectrum.
You went to one of those, like you didn't go in kind of incognito. You went to one of these famous, awful workshop things.
No, see, I'm a cast in blue Democrat. Like I had no idea that I would be castigated from showing up to these things. I was as naive as they come. I showed up kind of curious, and then I started, I'm no wallflower, as you can probably tell, but I just kept asking questions like, this is absurd. Is anybody else seeing how dumb this is? This doesn't make any sense to me. Are you saying X, Y, and Z? You want me to introduce myself to a child and say what my pronouns are? No.
Can I ask, Erin? I know you're a lawyer. Did you have previous for campaigning to, because we know you're about to go into something. So I just want to know, what was your previous to that?
No, I mean, I certainly wasn't silent. I wasn't sitting on the sidelines. I didn't know what I didn't know. I mean, our school started to introduce social emotional learning. And I went to the school with a bunch of other parents, liberal parents, saying, what are you teaching these kids? This isn't, and it was innocuous then. I'm like, why are you taking 15 minutes out of the day to do my job? My job is to teach my children how to, walk around in the world. Your job is to teach math. And our schools were failing too. That was the other thing, is why would you take out any time in the school day to teach emotional learning when my kids can't do their multiplication tables and we're all paying for personal tutors for our kids? So, I would go to school board meetings, but very gently and, but no, I was not a campaigner. I was not involved in politics. I made my opinion known, but, I'd never gone to Sacramento. I never had read a bill during the process and raised an alarm. I was, I had 2 kids, 2 dogs, a husband, a regular life. I was, a ton of fun. Like I threw parties and social and tennis.
And you're a Democrat.
Yeah. And I'm a Democrat. And so I wasn't even reading this stuff. And I voted the Dem ticket because I believed they were the same party that I joined when I was 18 years old.
Wow.
So I was not a rebel rouser by any stretch. And I think I talked to you really early on, Stella. I don't know if you remember this.
No.
Oh, really early on. Really early on in my trajectory. I called everyone. I was that person once my daughter said she was trans. I was like, who are the experts? I'm calling them all.
What did I say? God, yikes.
You were very kind to me. I went to one of the parent parent meetings, and I kept saying things like, well, if we just talk to them, if we just tell them that this is all wrong, if we just, talk to the teachers and explain to them that nobody's born in the wrong body. And you just looked at me shaking your head like, girl, you don't know what you just walked into. Because I really didn't. I really thought this is so irrational. No one's going to put boys in girls' locker rooms or agree that a girl can become a boy or vice versa. And you just looked at me with your little doughy eyes, just like, very sweet of you, but that's not the real world that we're living in. And
So
that was,
when did you think, oh, whoa, this is actually something really serious? When did that kind of arrive, or how did that arrive?
well, when Child Protective Services showed up at my front door.
Wow.
Um, yeah. So, at first, when my daughter said that she was a boy, it's COVID. All the kids in the neighborhood, especially the girls, seemed to be hit the hardest with the lockdowns. And again, in California, we had the longest duration of lockdowns, and the girls didn't break the rules. They stayed in their rooms, they stayed online, they lived in this virtual reality. My son, on the other hand, was riding his bike, breaking curfew, running around in fields, playing sports.
Wow.
And the girls were locked in. And so, across the board, across with my friends, our kids reached a depth of depression that will be studied for decades because
I
they were
agree.
locked. They were locked up. They weren't going to school. No set, and their parents are scared. So you put all this together, and nobody's socializing, and especially here in California, we couldn't go to restaurants. We couldn't do anything. We were locked in our houses. And it's frightening for a kid. They don't have the ability to, navigate that. So when my daughter said she was a boy, I thought, okay, sure. And I was given the name of two parents who had kids who were trans identified. And one parent, I knew her son since he was in preschool, and he was an odd duck, and she wasn't affirming. And I was like, oh, but your kid's, he probably is trans. And the other person did the suicide, dead daughter, live son, and she was a neurological nurse. So I'm like, well, she's probably right. But not my kid. Like other people's kids. Other people's kids are trans, but not mine. And my daughter was, all about pink and sparkles. Like I was in that mindset that a girl is pink and frilly, even though I'm not at all. So I'm like, this can't be. This can't, this can't be. And then all I did, it was within a week. I looked at that Tavistock graph where you see
Wow.
the uptick, that 5,000% uptick, and that was red flashes are going off. Like nothing in the world increases at a percentage like that is natural in the world. And so that was the light bulb moment, is this is all made up. And that's when I started reading as much as I could on this and realizing that this was all based on pseudoscience.
And how did you respond to your daughter, and how did it come that the protective services arrived at your door?
Well, it was COVID, and she had started her freshman year in high school, and I could hear through the wall that they were calling her a male name and using male pronouns. And I think her first assignment had something to do with pronouns and creating a game of gender identity, like Monopoly of gender identity. And I called the school again. I'm still in kind of my naive state. And I called the school and I said, how dare you change my daughter's name? Like, who are you? And by the way, what does my daughter look like? Because she had never stepped foot in the school. I said, tell
For
me something
you,
about her. Anything. Is she fat? Tall? What's her favorite
masculine?
ice cream? Yeah. I asked them, I'm like, what do you know of her? Name one thing you know of her. And they said, well, we know we need to be a safe space. excuse me? Safe from whom? Was my question. From whom? Me?
Wow.
Tell me something about me. Tell me anything you know about me
Good
and my
for you.
family. Tell me one thing. And they couldn't, of course. And then a couple of days later, Child Protective Services knocked on my door.
Oh my God.
Um, and again, I was like, well, will you get a load of this? My daughter thinks she's a boy. Like I was so naive.
I
I
get
really
it
had,
though. You were the one who was in reality. You were the normal one here. Yeah. But the world had gone mad.
right, right. And, and then cottoned on to, hey, I'm enemy number one. Parents are enemy number one. So I just kept saying, well, I'm a lawyer, so I think we'll take care of this, in our home. So they never came back. But that was a rude awakening that I had stepped into this really odd world of where parents are enemy number one. And, you're going to be coerced into believing nonsense. And, we tried to hire therapists. And one of the therapists, I mean, I'll never forget this. I can't even call her a therapist because it's a misnomer. But, when I went through kind of her childhood, I mean, I would break out in hives at the American Girl doll store, like, and high teas. Like, that's not my jam. But I did this with my daughter because this is what she wanted. And when I told the therapist, I said, look, she was as girly as can be. And she said, oh, well, she was just waiting to come out and show her real self. And I'm going to curse. I just said, bullshit, like sign my daughter up for Mensa. So from age 0 to 12, she was just pretending so that she could come out when she was 13. I mean, brilliant. She's a brilliant child then. What an actor.
Yeah.
And then then the whole world crumbled because I was like, everybody has some crazy mind virus and can't see reality.
Yeah.
And
Frightening.
then you wait. And then you wait. And I called everyone, like, what are people doing about this? And I kept waiting for someone to start talking about this, for someone to take the lead, for someone to raise the alarm. And everybody was silent. And I realized that that's going to be my burden, that no one's coming to save us, that we have to take up arms. That
Wow.
it's going to be the parents. And it's, even though there's no playbook, I didn't know what I was doing. Like, we are going to have to do this and
Um,
save our
th-
kids.
that's a very key point. And when you look at any kind of cultural revolutions that have happened, nobody knows it's happening when it's happening, and nobody knows what to do. It's only in hindsight we can say, oh, you should do this and you should do that. 10 years later, 20 years later, we get that insight. And so, in retrospect, did you get a therapist? Were they any good? Is there much point in therapy in this context? And what happened? How did you navigate this?
Well, I searched for therapists and psychiatrists because, at this point, my daughter was um, suicidal and in the depths of depression because she truly believed three things. She believed she was born wrong, everything. Everything was wrong with her. Imagine being a 13-year-old girl and thinking everything is wrong with you. That her mom is a bigot and doesn't love her because she doesn't support her, and that she's going to commit suicide. I mean, she would tell me, trans kids commit suicide. Imagine thinking that. So this child was terribly distressed, and I searched for psychiatrists and therapists. And, in hindsight, again, I didn't know what I was doing. I did meet a psychiatrist who kept saying to me, I'll deal with her depression, but I don't deal with gender identity. which now I know is code for I'm a non-affirmer. But at the time, I'm like, what are you talking about? I need you to deal with the gender identity part.
She thinks she's
Um,
a boy.
yeah, exactly. And she's like, and it was code. It was code for I will look
Yeah.
at really what's ailing her. So I had to go out of state. So I went to a psychiatrist who was also a therapist, who had already gotten 2 kids out of this. This doctor was extremely expensive, but that's what we ended up doing. And then I really clamped down. So I took the phone. It was really, really hard. I took the internet from her. I isolated her even more, which is a really tough thing to do. And I let her hate me. She hated me with such venom. And I just, I had to take it because I knew that the real kid that I raised was still in there, and that the hate is her pain that she's just foisting on me. And you know this, Stella, but it's a really hard thing for parents to take a step back and say, my child is not supposed to, may not like me right now, but what I'm doing is the best for my child. And so I risked that. I risked a lot to make
Wow.
sure that she would get out of, what I would consider a cult. And it's really hard to do, because when your child is telling you that they hate you daily, you want to give in because you want your child to love you, but you have to remember that they do, and that boundaries are so vital when your child is taking on a trans identity. Actually, in anything, in raising a kid, you really have to have boundaries, even if they're mad at you.
It really strikes me in how parents are advised when their child is anorexic. They're like told boundaries of steel, make the child eat. If they don't eat, you kind of, it all falls apart. You need to have boundaries. You need to kind of really, really be very strong in the face of profound hatred. And addiction would be similar too, that you just have to, be pretty hardcore. How long did that last? Those hard times?
About a year and a half,
Wow.
with fits and starts. Um, but yeah, it was a long road, and there were days I gave up, you know, or I said, go do it.
Mm.
And then of course I'd get up the next day and be like, no,
Um,
I need to save my child. Um, yeah, it's really hard because again, the parent is usually walking this alone. The parent is hated. So you're really getting it from all sides. No one's there really to help you, especially back in, 2020. We were looked at as pariahs. And,
wow. And when did you
and
know there was kind of any sort of green shoots, like that something was changing? Did you get signs earlier, or how did you know that things were on the change?
yeah, so, it was a slow process, and you go forward and you go backwards, and then you go forward and then you go backwards. But it was the accepting of her name. It was really odd. If I called her real name, it was like daggers for her. My husband always called her real name, my son. But anything I did, like I was the catalyst for everything. So I called her a lot of pet names, when she was a child, and the cute names. And then I would throw in her real name and see how it would land. And then we got to a point where I just called her real name, and there wasn't a wince, there wasn't a rolling of the eyes. And then, the ultimate um, end for it was we went on a vacation. We were going on a vacation where you had to wear a bathing suit, which, in the trans world, a bathing suit is like just hell. Um, so I laid out all these different variations of bathing suits for her to pick from. I said, we're packing, pick one. from boy shorts to tankinis to a full, female bathing suit to the white bikini that she used to steal of mine when she was little and, wear it around with high heels on. And she chose the white bikini. And she put it on and she looked in the mirror and her face just lit up.
Oh.
She saw beauty. And she, despite the hair under her arms and the hairy legs and all of that, but you could tell that she looked in the mirror and she liked what she saw. And this is what this is all about, right? These kids look in the mirror and they are repulsed by their reflection, but she wasn't. And that was then I knew she was coming back. And we went on our trip and she stole my razor and, she had returned. Not that being a woman is being shaved and all of that, but that's who my daughter was. And so she came back.
And did you do anything, that really slow, kind of extended process of desistance, which is horrifically long for so many parents and really difficult. Did you change tack at that point? Did you do anything different?
No. Well, I played it cool. You have to play it cool. You can't do a happy dance and you can't celebrate it except in your head. So, I acted indignant, actually. I'm like, of course you took my bathing suit. I acted like I would in my normal self. Like, well, now I can't wear it because, you're 15 and your body looks great. And now I can't wear it. Now it's ruined. Just, so try to be very, very normal and not celebrate these wins. Because, these kids dig in too. Once they say that there's something, they don't want to give their parents an inch. So you have to let them believe that it was all they're doing coming out of this.
And did she remain with her friend group? Was it kind of between the ages of 12 and 15? And did you do anything about the friend group? Genspect's Bigger Picture Conference Series returns for its fourth landmark international event this September, the 27th and 28th, Saturday and Sunday, in Albuquerque in New Mexico. At this time, we're not just analysing problems, we're shaping the solution. We're looking for a way forward, and we've chosen the best speakers, the best leading thinkers of our generation to discuss how we can move the dial. With the theme Live Not by Lies, Conversation for a Culture in Crisis, this year's conference tackles one of the most urgent challenges of our time: how to speak truth in the face of conformity, confusion, and institutional pressure. As the politicisation of sex and gender continues to divide societies and derail thoughtful discourse and destroy loving and engaged families, this groundbreaking counterpoint to WPATH brings together the world's leading thinkers, clinicians, policymakers, lawyers, politicians, and psychologists to forge a path that is ethical, evidence-based, and grounded in reality. Abigail Schreier will expose the hidden consequences of bad therapy. Dr. Lisa Littmer will present her latest groundbreaking research. Lionel Shriver lays bare how society's fixation on trans identity distorts truth and undermines fundamental freedoms. Peter Boghossian will present Truth Over Lies, Bold Conversations in a Fractured Culture. Dr. Patrick Lappert will discuss the impact of trans surgery, while Dr. Quinton van Meter will discuss the impact of hormones. Following defining events in Killarney, Ireland, in Denver, Colorado, in Lisbon, Portugal, we're now coming to Albuquerque in New Mexico. This is more than just a conference, it's a call to action. Join us for 2 days of unflinching honesty, rigorous evidence, and solution-focused collaboration. It's time to move the dial, and you need to be in the room. Visit genspect.org to secure your place.
Oh, I got rid of every single one of them.
Wow.
They were no longer allowed in my house, or if they came, I made it very uncomfortable because I was searching their bags. It was really like a drug addiction too, because part of this too, these kids were engaged in in drugs, so weed. They were also bringing tattooing kids, dropping off binders. I mean, I can't tell you the number of binders that I found hidden in my daughter's room. Like, I would toss her room like a drug addict, like looking for cocaine. And I would take them and dump them. Old phones, kids. I truly have a stack of iPhone 5s, like about this high. These kids would drop them off. They drop them off in the mailbox. They, bring them in sweatshirts. And so eventually, I was the horrible mother and nobody wanted to come to my house. And I was happy to be that. You come to my house, you play by my rules. I don't call you. I don't use pronouns. I don't, I go through your bags. You are not left alone. Really strict rules, which is not my normal. I'm not that mom.
Was it not? Oh, that's interesting. You actually, that was not your normal up until age 12, and it was for this you changed into Sergeant Major.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't have a choice. I was not a helicopter mom at all. And then I had to become it, which was also painful because no parent actually enjoys looking through their children's phone or, searching through their child's room. It's not, I don't want to play detective. I don't want that role at all, but I had to do that because of, I mean, my daughter also, I'm sure you know this, but when a young girl puts on their Instagram account or Twitter or whatever, FTM, female to male, these are calling cards for older men to find these kids. And they get pushed a lot of pornography and highly sexualized material because these men know this is a vulnerable girl. This is a girl who is dissociating with her body, and she's an easy target for us to get her, to sell pictures of herself in states of undress because it's really not her body. She's going to get those breasts removed. And there's a really dark underbelly to the whole trans movement with pedophilia and taking advantage of both young girls and young boys who are self-loathing. That they're the easiest target. Pedophiles don't go after confident kids.
You're right. They actually actively target hurt, distressed, self-loathing kids because it's the easiest way to open the door. But there's something I want to ask you about. There would be a lot of people listening who would say, no, that's too hard. It's the relationship is everything. This isn't what you should do. This is high stakes. And they would disagree with your way. How would you respond to that?
Well, when I talk to parents who have gotten their children out of this, we tend to have done the same thing. And there's a difference between loving your child and setting boundaries. You can have both. You can love your child and set boundaries at the same time. Keeping the relationship. I mean, I wasn't horrible to my daughter. I didn't tell her, you're stupid for taking this gender identity. It was done with total love and with as much kindness as you can muster while holding the line. But I talk to parents who they place the relationship above everything. And they call me years later and they say their child now is on testosterone. And I'm like, but because they didn't say no loud enough. So I think, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's different for other parents, but I actually think you have to take a really hard line on this. If you look at it as if your child is addicted to drugs, then go that route, because I think too much of the soft touch isn't going to get you to the end game. I think it's perfectly appropriate for parents to say, I'm not paying for college if you go on hormones. Make it very clear. Most children love their parents, and they figure if the parent is this hard-lined on something, that it must be bad for them, even if they're not saying that. So yeah, I took a very different tact. I know a lot of therapists are like relationship, relationship, relationship. Well, I had that too. I made sure my daughter knew that I loved her more than anything on the planet. Well, framing everything, and you're not doing this.
Wow. Yeah, I think there's a lot of received wisdom among parents, and I'm really glad the parents got together in lots of groups, but some of the received wisdom I don't think is accurate. And one of them is placing the relationship over everything, because if you allow certain kind of nefarious influences into your child's life, that relationship will be destroyed anyway. So, you think you're clinging on to the relationship. You're not. You're just kidding yourself. You're in a false paradise while you're allowing something that is actually going to ruin your relationship with your child. Like you say, as if it's drugs, or as well as if it's anorexia or something like that. You're letting that in. And that's going to ruin the relationship much more powerfully than you saying no.
And you hear that from detransitioners. I hear that from them. They wish their parents had held the line. And they talk about their parents who have, in such glowing language. Like Simon spoke, is it Price? His father
Simon Price,
spoke, spoke at the FTC. I mean, it brought me to tears to have the father and son sitting there, and the father took the hard line, and he's like, this is not going to happen to my son. And you see Simon turn to his father and just say, I love you, Dad. Like, I'm so grateful to you for doing this. And then you hear other detransitioners whose parents gave up on them, or consented. And some parents, I'm not going to denigrate parents, because look, 7 out of 7 doctors told me to transition my child. They all told me she was going to commit suicide. This is a real fear. I mean, it's so coercive and horrible to do this to a
Wow.
parent, to give them that choice, dead child or trans child. What do you do as a parent? You're terrified. So I don't want to ever come down hard on parents, but when I do speak to parents, I'm like, you have to go harder. Plus, you have limited time. Especially if the child is a minor, you only have until they're 18 to start building those seeds that are going to get them not to poison their bodies. And if they're over 18, it's really hard, but they're more mature somewhat, that you have to have these conversations with them. They need to know, because no one knows their child more than a parent does. And even if the child reacts poorly to those conversations, inside that child loves the parent more than anyone, too.
Yeah. I do think that there's a lot of therapists, gender critical therapists, who are also propagating this idea of easy, relationship is everything. And the more and deeper I get in, I'm like, yeah, that's an easier route for everybody to nod along to. But everything I know about mental health, and I would argue that I know quite a lot, would say that's not what you do with anorexia. That's not what you do with alcoholism. That's not what you do with drug addiction. That's not what you do with self-harm. You know what I mean? Yes, you do keep an eye on the relationship, but you don't, not over everything. I think, it's very important to be aware of when there is a real destructive influence in the house.
And I would say, I mean, no offense again to therapists, but this is a new realm.
I know.
And
Plenty of
for
offense to therapists. We haven't,
right?
we have been a disaster. I really believe we've been a disaster. Total disaster.
Right. I mean, they're navigating this new ability too, but I don't think it works. Like any parent who got their child out, I'm like, oh, we did the same thing. We took the phone, we took the internet, we stopped the friends that came over, we switched schools. mean, I've told parents to move, and they have, and their kid comes out. Like, get out of the state that you're in.
Yeah.
And your child's going to be angry with you for a month or two. But boy, when they come back, it's amazing.
Wow. Do you think it gets very, very exhausting to keep saying no, to being hardline? I'd say an awful lot of parents just can't keep it going because it's just so hard, especially as they get older. You know, you've got a certain level of influence when a kid is 13 or 14. It diminishes every year.
That's true, and it is hard. It's exhausting. I mean, I spent many a day sometimes not getting out of bed because I
Oh,
just couldn't have another fight, or I would just take off for the day because I was like, I didn't have the energy to do the battle. And like I said, I mean, there were days where I'm like, well, go do it.
yeah.
Fine. Emancipate, get on drugs.
Wow.
Um, and then a couple hours later, I'm like, no, I didn't mean it. um, because you are exhausted and you're beaten to a pulp. Um, Parents, I understand when they give up. I mean, I sat my car on the railroad track. Literally sat my car on the railroad track because I couldn't fathom that everyone in the world is cheering the demise of my child on and no one's there to help me. Obviously I didn't do it, but that's the depth of horror because you're watching your child just get eaten up, eaten alive, day after day, and you know what the end's going to be.
And
For
what
your
what made you move the car? What brought you to a better place?
Because I have another child,
Oh, yeah.
and I couldn't, and I couldn't harm anyone, and I knew she was going to eventually come out of it too, and the guilt that she would have to live with her entire life for this. I couldn't voice that on her, but I was tired. I was tired and I was beaten and I was alone and frightened and
No, just another question occurs to me because I'm trying to think of so many parents who know us who'll be listening. And I'm thinking, like, plenty of these kids medically transitioned, and the parents are living with that. What is your thoughts around that? Because it's a reality and it's an increasing reality, you know?
well, again, I kind of look at what the detransitioners uh tell us. So you look at Forrest, for
Oh yeah.
example, and he medically transitioned, and I 23, I think it was at 23, he had to come home. He
Yeah.
was no longer able to live this life of, paid homelessness. He had gotten all this government money, and he came home, and his parents had that door wide open for him. And that's what parents have to do. They have to leave that door open and just, so what I tell them is to continue to send those birthday cards, birthday presents, reaching out, every couple months, even if there's no response from that child, is to always tell them that they have this off ramp, that you're always there. You're not going to judge them when they come back, and you're their steady. And so I still believe, I really believe in my heart of hearts that you never capitulate. So even if your child is fully medicalized, I would not call them that opposite sex. I would not pretend that they are, who they identify as. I think that's a mistake because there is no tether to reality. And those kids need it, whether they're 25 or 30. We see this all the time of people detransitioning at the age of 30.
Hmm. I run detrans support meetings, and the numbers are large, and the regret is devastating. And
So
yeah,
what's your opinion on that that parents of adult children who have transitioned?
I think people shouldn't put up with what they can't put up with. I think the parent is just as important as anybody else in the family. I don't believe in suppressing yourself for anybody else. I don't think it's good for a parent to suppress their thoughts or their values or their beliefs for the child. I think it creates an imbalance that is very dysfunctional, actually quite toxic. So I think you have to stand your sacred ground. I think you have to stand your ground. And what that is, I wouldn't dare to say for each parent, but find your ground and stand it and decide that's what I can't put up with. This idea that you have to put up with, let's say, a child who decides to come home, because there's something very like the anorexic desire. Sometimes anorexics, some don't, but many do, choose to wear skimpy clothes and show their bones and demonstrate their skinniness. And they need specifically their mother, but their parents or their loved ones to see it. They need to kind of flaunt it and shove it in their faces again and again. Very similarly, a lot of people who are medically transitioning need their parents to be around as their voice changes, as their hair grows and all that. And I'm like, if that's driving you mad, you don't have to. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. I'm probably a dissident. Well, I am a dissident. There's no doubt about it. Other therapists wouldn't agree with me. But I didn't go in to this world with fully formed thoughts about this. I just brought everything I knew about mental health, and I just kept going back to what would I do with anorexia? What would I do with OCD? What would I do with addiction? Which I was very well informed around how to handle addiction, so I kind of knew about boundaries and enabling and colluding and how you can. It's a slippery slope. So, yeah, that's how I feel. But there's something I'd like to ask you about. You're unusual in so many ways, Erin, but you are unusual because after your child desisted, and she did, so tell us a little bit about that, she came out, the bikini was an amazing moment. But you're so unusual because so many parents that I've met, and I've met many parents whose kids have desisted, they are not interested in talking to other parents, not interested in meeting parents who are deep in the trenches, not interested in them to get me the hell away from that awful world. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. Get me away. They've kind of like, I don't like throwing around, but they've kind of got trauma. Like they're like, oh, no, even my name, they've said to me, even your name brings me out in kind of, those days. It's like somebody who's left Vietnam. They're like, I can't, maybe in a decade, but I can't go near it. You are unusual. So tell us, you've been phenomenal.
Well, I'm not religious, but I think this is a calling. I think it was foisted on me. And here's the thing. You may save your child, but you didn't save your grandchildren, and you didn't save your nieces and nephews. And you didn't save yourself, because let's be realistic about what's going on here. I mean, I want a bathroom that I'm safe in. I'm a woman. I don't want people taking my name and turning me into a chest feeder or front hole haver or any of these other derogatory terms. So as a woman, too, I cannot go silently into the night. And the pain that I felt, like I said, I'm a pretty strong woman. The fact that I had my car sitting on a railroad track and I'm strong, I can't imagine what a weaker parent is going through. And so they need a voice. And I have, luckily, some skill sets that, translate. I'm a lawyer. There's not much that scares me. Actually, there's nothing that scares me when it comes to kids. Huh?
You're going to be speaking about the role of lawfare at our conference in New Mexico. Could you tell us about where you're thinking about with this? Because the role of lawfare around dismantling trans ideology, and I think it's a very important presentation you're going to give.
Yeah, and I was hoping you were going to ask me what I was going to speak about, because it's changing so quickly.
Wow.
The number of lawsuits that are being filed is exploding, which really makes me happy. Not just because I'm a lawyer and we like to sue, but all of these things are going up to the Supreme Court, and we have been waiting for a long time for this to happen, and it's happening in rapid succession, and we are starting to win these cases. We'll get a family related case, parental rights, which is really what needs to happen. That's going to be probably the next case taken up by the Supreme Court after sports. And once the Supreme Court rules on these cases and really comes to the conclusion, which I know that they will, is that there's no such thing as a transgender child. Let's just say it. There's no such thing. And I'm really quite tired of people tippy-toeing around this, using the wrong language and not really saying what this is and being direct. The days of being kindness are over. We cannot go back to 2019 and 2018 where, only adults are transitioning. We cannot go back. We need to go all the way back and kill this. It's not good enough. And we need the courts helping us to do that, because the notion that there's a human that is born in the wrong body is false and deceptive right from the get-go and should not be given any legal rights whatsoever as an existing discrete group, because it's not a discrete group.
Yeah, it's such an important point you raise. You know that phrase, the fruit of the poison tree? For as long as people are starting to say, that there are these special group of people that we have to kind of ring fence, and all policies has to take it, like the caste review, frankly, and like an awful lot of organizations and groups and commentators dancing around. Like I wrote an article recently and I talked about how the theologians in the mid kind of, the kind of hundreds of years ago, they argued about how many angels could dance on the head of a pin. And my point was that they're like all this arguing about this, and some of them maybe when they're 25 and maybe when they're 30 and maybe if they've gone through 75 different checks and all that. And it's like, no, this is all a false premise. This is a severe mental illness that requires, I believe, a lot of compassion and a lot of care, but don't collude with mental illness. Don't enable it. Don't pretend that this is anything but a harmful intervention that causes devastating harm on the body and devastating harm on the mind. I think we underappreciate how much it hurts people mentally.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and the people who throw this, well, it might be good for some people, like even Cass. And I'm like, well, who? How do you know? Yeah. What's the basic? Where's the science on that? You don't have any science on that.
Who is the godlike figure who can say, it'll be good for you, but not you?
That's Edwards. Yeah. That's Edwards Lieber, don't you know? She has the special sauce.
But it's a real issue. It's a real issue. It's turned into born in the wrong body. It might be right for some people. It's a get-out, mealy-mouthed, cowardly way of saying, I can't really stand up for what I know is true, because I don't believe that many people believe this. Anybody who's read about it and who's really informed themselves on this, they know this is a harmful intervention, and self-reports are not enough to go on, because people will very rarely regret devastating decisions in their life. We know that about humans. People marry somebody and 30 years later, I should have stayed. People don't regret. We assimilate our experiences.
Well, I mean, think of the woman. I remember reading this early on, and maybe you don't know of her, but she identified as a blind person. And her therapist, again, therapies. Sorry, your profession.
No,
I'm just going down the toilet.
I'm going through a dark night of the soul around therapists. Yeah, I think we lost our way long ago. Frank Furedi wrote about therapy culture 20 years ago. Abigail nailed it a couple of years ago, and the therapist's response was, "Oh no, you're wrong." I said, "No, she's right." But anyway, I think I know this blind person. It's a crazy story. Go on.
So she blinded herself because, and the therapist helped her, with the chemical concoction, and she poured it into her eyes, and she blinded herself. And she's as happy as a clam now that she's a blind person. I mean, that's what she'll tell you. But what is her life like? She's morbidly obese. She's probably on welfare.
Yeah, her self-report is kind of irrelevant. Is it a good intervention or is it not? Is it supported by evidence or is it not? Whether somebody says, I'm happy with it, I don't care really, to be honest, because that's not enough for us, for anybody who's professional or anybody who's serious about something, it's just not enough to say, well, your man down the road is happy and so therefore we should go with it. An extraordinary unscientific approach. And weirdly enough, it's a lot of the science organizations that are arguing. That's where I go back to angels dancing on the head of a pin. These were very intelligent theologians who were arguing this a few hundred years ago. And it was crazy town. They were all crazy. It was being too clever for them from themselves rather than saying this is a harmful intervention. It's quite simple. It's quite a harmful intervention.
Yeah, it's harmful for everyone. Look, the men who have the fetish, it's harmful for women. And these men who have the fetish, and when they're growing in numbers because of pornography. So you have that set, and so it's not good for them. Then you have these kids who are growing up sterile with all the doors being slammed. And I can't imagine the difficulty of waking up every day and putting on a costume and having my whole day be about whether I pass, whether I fool somebody, whether somebody misgendered me. What an exhausting existence. It must be excruciating for people to do this.
It's psychologically so wrong. You're giving away your entire well-being to other people's perception of you. That's why I say fundamentally, psychologically, this is a bad intervention, because it's a bad way to navigate the world. One should be trying to kind of find your own way, not dependent on other people and like putting on fake voices and saying this is my authentic self. It's so wrong-footed. But just like we're coming towards the end, and there's something I want to ask you, and you might have anything else that you want to add. I feel I was, in retrospect, and I think Lisa Littman's work is phenomenal. I think she's the best researcher in the field. I think we're so lucky to have her. I couldn't have more respect for Lisa Littman. However, something about the way ROGD, Rapid Onset Gender Dysphoria, was framed to me and to many others was this, especially from parents to me, and other experts, was like, this is a new cohort. This is a new thing. Because of this rise in these young girls, you have to disassociate these two delusions as such. So, what has got a 50-year-old man with a fetish has got in common with a 13-year-old girl who has lost her way and is deluded that she's a boy. But I kind of believe that actually the delusion is very similar. Like the fetish does added a complexity, but I feel that we kind of overdid it in differentiating between the different groups, and actually it's a delusion. A 50-year-old man can have deep depression, 50-year-old man can have OCD, and so can a 13-year-old girl. It's for very different reasons. Anybody can be an addict, anybody can be an anorexic. So just because it comes from different profiles, the obsessive thinking and gullibility or almost of these people is quite striking. And I don't see the big differentiation. I don't make the big differentiation. I'm just interested in what you think of that.
Well, I make a little bit more of a differentiation because I think some of the men, because we don't see a huge swatch of women over 30 transitioning. Mm-hmm. Like that's not what the data is showing. We see teenagers and young adults, and that fits right in there with Lisa Littman with social contagion. I mean, social contagions for time immemorial have been starting with young girls and spreads like wildfire. Even what was it? The cold, I don't know, the ice bucket challenge, like that's a social contagion. That one, I mean, some of these are innocuous and some are, but there's definitely a social contagion going on, starting with young girls and it moves over to the boys. But the men have the older men have a different basis for this. I mean, a lot of it is to humiliate women by coming into their spaces and taking their trophies. We see when there is a third category, a trans category, they don't want to participate in that because there's no joy in winning if you can't step on the head of a woman. So I think their mental desires are different than the younger cohort, which is escapism, escaping the person that they were born and becoming a new person. I think many of the men who transition at 40 or 50, yes, they're deluded. But also it's from a hatred towards females. The vitriol that these men have towards women, like the joy that they get in coming into our bathrooms and taking pictures and pushing us out of the way and suing us for saying that they're men. That's a whole different mental health issue, I think. Narcissism, power. And I don't think the younger cohort has that as much. I think they're more broken. They're more distressed, mentally distressed and sad and depressed. Whereas the men are narcissistic and controlling and hateful of women.
Yeah.
That's
yeah. And they have a sexual disorder, so there's an added issue there. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing you in Albuquerque giving this presentation. But is there anything else you'd like to add, either to parents or to people who are just listening and thinking of being involved? Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would, because I think parents need to understand their strength and their power, and they need to use it more and not be so afraid of their children. That's a really reversed role that has happened in the last, couple decades, is that children rule the roost. Child-led, again, your therapist groups. It's just a nonsensical thing. A child leads what? No. And this could have, we didn't have to reach this level if more people stood up. And that, maybe I'm being a jerk here, but it's kind of exhausting to me, because if more people stood up and had their voices heard, and again, there's no playbook, you can do whatever, but sitting around being silent and crying about this doesn't move the needle. And so people need to either donate to their favorite gender critical group, and I'm not, asking for money for me, but they need to stand up and appear, because the silence has been deafening. And this is how it happened, is people curled up into balls, or they got their kid out and then they went silent. And that just makes it continue on and on. And the tail of this is going to be decades long, because there's going to be, I'm fearful that there's going to be a large uptick of suicides post this movement, when these kids realize that the medical community failed them, the mental health community failed them, the government failed them, and maybe their parents. And so that's going to be a rude awakening for these kids. And, therapists better get ready and re-hone their skills, because there's, as you're dealing with the detransitioners.
Yeah.
The trust is no longer there, and the loneliness and the how did I get fooled is going to be a really tough thing for these young people to grapple with when they, can't have a relationship, can't have children, and have to look at their maimed bodies every single day because the adults around them failed them. So that's my advice. Get involved. Do something. Silence is not an option. Should never be an option. Not when kids and humans are at stake here.
Well, Erin Friday, thank you. Thank you for the work you do, and thank you for your strength. You really are a very admirable character.
Well, let me ask you, do you remember my conversation with you from the very beginning?
People ask me this all the time. And I'm like, it was such a blur of madness at the time. There was so many parents, and they'd come in and they'd be like, whoa. I don't. I wish I did. I really wish I did.
No,
Because
that's
obviously,
okay.
though,
That's okay.
yeah,
I mean, of course I remember because I was so,
it was such a
shocked
crazy
when you were
time.
just looking at me. It's not going to go that way. You can't just talk to
Is that what I? Is that what I was just straight. This is yeah.
with total kindness. You're like, oh, I'm not sure that's going to work. Well, have you tried it? You were very sweet. Like, have you tried that? And how did it go? And of course, it was a complete
Okay.
fail.
Devastating time. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget that time. It was just devastating. Meeting so many parents who were so decent and their families' lives were ruined. And especially the mothers. It was really noticeable.
Yeah, the mothers and the siblings. I know you had a sibling meeting
Yeah.
at one point,
Yeah.
but the siblings are another forgotten group because they are the walking wounded too. They see their parents crumble and they see their siblings go down a rabbit hole and um,
Oh, they see their parents' lives distressed. They see the sibling. It's a really complex, difficult role to play as a sibling because you're supposed to not think about your sibling all that much. You know, you're kind of off you go. So everything is difficult for the siblings. It's really, really hard. Okay, Erin, thank you. Thank
all
you so
right.
much.
All right. Thank you. Bye.